What?
I'm looking for Mr. Hemingway.
Let me guess. You want to learn the real work, right?
That's kind of what I was hoping.
So let me ask you. Who do you know?
Paul the Whale?
I tell you what, better yet, who knows you?
Big JB. He's the one who told me to come down here.
JB. Tell you what, I gotta make a call. You know the casino next door?
Sure.
15 minutes. This address, after midnight, ask for the back room. Oh, by the way, you're gonna be in fast company, kid. Don't embarrass me.
So, what do you want to know? Hi, I'm Damian Nieman. Now, some guys probably asked why I'm doing this DVD series. First of all, in case you haven't heard, there's a writer's strike going on in Hollywood, so not a lot going on at the moment. Second of all, and more importantly, is ever since Shade, guys will come up to me or send me emails asking me questions on to guide them where the best place is to find a false shuffle or a false deal and how to learn things. So I finally decided to put down my thoughts and some of the things that I know into this DVD set. And these are things that I learned from guys like Mike Skinner, Larry Jennings, later on Earl Nelson, and Steve Forty, and a bunch of other people. I've just been very lucky to be around some of these guys. So these are my takes and techniques that I've learned from them, put them together with a few little thoughts that I've put into it. Not claiming ownership on any of this stuff. These are just basic tools that you can use for your gambling demos or for magic or whatever you want to use them for. But the DVDs are set up and separated into 2 discs. First one, they're basic tools of the trade. The different sleights and stuff you need to have in your arsenal to have a good gambling demo. And the second one is basic card effects. Cutting the aces, versions of Triumph, different things like that, Larry Jennings, Open Travelers, stuff that I really use when I'm performing at the castle and the kind of stuff I use to show the cast and crew when I was first getting them interested in the movie. So I hope you learned some stuff here. I hope you enjoy it. Have fun shuffling. Alright, I'm going to assume that most of you already are familiar with how to shuffle cards on the table here, but just in case you aren't, here are a couple little tips, things to think about. Cards are shuffled like so. Top cut over to the right generally. The cards are allowed to riffle off the thumbs. It's being done very, very gently. Not a lot of force being used at all. Generally the top finger, the first finger, excuse me, is on top, allowing the cards to riffle together. Also, the cards can be undercut, bringing the bottom portion over to the right. Really no right or wrong way to do this, unless of course you're in a casino and they require you to shuffle in a particular way. There's what's known as the opened and closed shuffle. Closed shuffle is where you're shuffling at the inner ends together. Open just means cards are being held back a little bit further and shuffled. Really aren't many pluses and minuses, but sometimes if you want to see indices and so on and so forth, you'll want to use one or the other. Let's talk quickly about attitude with the cards. How you shuffle says a lot about you as a performer or as a card handler. Cards should be handled and shuffled quickly. Like this is nothing more than just a tool to mix the cards up, which is exactly what it is. But the way you handle cards will tell your audience a lot about you yourself. Well, the most basic way of controlling a card or cards is just controlling the top card. Say this is your top card here. The cards are cut over to the right, and all you do is allow that top card to fall on top every single time. Very simple and straightforward. Same thing for the bottom. If the bottom card is the one you want to keep hold of, all you do is let those cards stay on the bottom throughout the shuffles. Very simple, very straightforward, and effective. One of the simplest false cuts here. It's very simple. It's a full deck control, and all basically is happening is giving it 3 cuts, and the deck stays in the entire same order. All that is happening is you're undercutting about a third, bringing it on top, keeping a break there with the left thumb. Can't see anything from the front. The next third is cut out from under it, half below your break, and then you have the last little bit, everything below the break is brought up to the top, and your deck is back in exactly the same order. Done at speed, it should be on a 1, 2, 3 count. Here's another technique, what's known as stripping the deck. It's actually something you'll see done in casinos all the time, and what's actually happening is after the deck is shuffled, the cards will be picked up and small packets will be drawn off the top and allowed to fall. Now that's done a little more study than you would probably see it done in a casino or something. It'd actually be done very fast like this. Another variation is actually taking it and doing it off to the side like that. Here's a way of actually using the strip as a way to keep track of cards on top of the deck. Your object card is on top, you've shuffled it there, kept it there. And what you're going to do is you would take, undercut, and legitimately strip the cards down onto the pile below. But what you do is you leave it jogged. This is obviously exaggerated a little bit, but you can see that there's a nice little jog there. So when you take to square up the cards, you grab the break there, undercut off to the right, which will now bring your original top card back up to the top. Maintain it during the shuffle, and there you go. Here's actually the false version of the strip cut. It actually maintains the entire order of the deck. What actually is going to happen is you actually are going to undercut about a third, bring it to the top, immediately cut out from underneath, let this drop, and then come back and you're going to mimic the exact same motions, but instead of taking little packs off the top, you're going to take it off the bottom, let it drop right down onto the pack. And at speed, you can't really tell that it's coming off the bottom as opposed to the top, and it's fairly deceptive. Full deck control. This is actually the way that I do false strip cut. It's actually my go-to false cut whenever I'm shuffling. It maintains the order of the entire deck. And what's going on is exactly the same thing in the false strip cut. You're undercutting, bringing it up, holding that break, cutting out from under it, but instead of just going straight up and letting these packets fall straight down like we did before, what is going on is actually the right hand is kind of coming back and forth in this little arc here, and as you do that, you strip off the bottom as it comes back to the rest of the deck, and I think that just gives a little bit better illusion of being mixed up, and at speed I think it's actually pretty deceiving. Controls the entire deck. This is another false cut, another full deck control here. This is actually something that was done by the professor, Vernon. Show you exactly what's going on here. What's happening is you're undercutting about 2/3 of the deck, putting it on top, but you're grabbing it and leaving it out jogged here, but from the front it's masked by your fingers here so no one can see what's going on. And immediately you go right into pulling out from under that out jogged step, little packets, very quickly. until you're left with one card, maybe a few less, one card, a few less, a few more actually. Then the rest of the deck is pulled out under the step and slapped on top. And there's your card, and it's actually the entire deck is in the same order. So done at speed, just like that. Here's a quick and easy false cut here. It's actually a full deck control. It's a triple cut. Done at speed, it looks like that. All that's happening is a third of the cards are being undercut, brought to the top, and as you bring them over, you will actually step them a little bit, and as you grab hold, you're going to grab about half of that secondary step there and bring it out. So actually this just stays stationary. Bring it forward, maintain the break, immediately drop what's below, and then drop the top. And then you can just reassemble the deck as such, and it's back in order. Done at speed, just like that. Here's actually another false cut, and it's pretty deceiving, triple cut, just like that. And I've actually seen other guys do this, and most of the time when they do is they actually will break the deck, front of it like that, and then grab out the center section and go into the cut. But I don't understand why you would really do that, because all you need to do is just reach and grab, and you can immediately just pull out a section. Doesn't matter how much you get out of the center. Move out, hold the break there between those two halves, come back, take the top portion, let it drop on top, come back immediately, hold your break there for a second, and undercut the rest back to the top. Now your deck is back in the original order. And done at speed, it's actually a nice looking cut. And if you want to actually add something to it, what you can do is exactly the same thing, go through the same motions until you get to this portion, and instead of just cutting this straight to the top, you can go right into that running false cut, the strip cut that we did before. And I think altogether that's actually a fairly decent looking, deceptive looking false cut. Here's actually a little flourish that really doesn't do anything but kind of look cool. Basically what it is you just shuffle the cards together and you give this little waterfall cascade here. And what's happening is you want to make sure it's a nice thorough shuffle, but it doesn't have to be like anything perfect. And generally it's in this section where the right half is shuffled into the left half, whether or not it's the top or bottom doesn't matter unless you're trying to keep track of something. And what will happen is the cards are pushed straight here, grabbed by the right hand in this kind of action between your middle finger and your thumb, and the cards are going to be pressed up against. I generally use this finger of my left hand and the pinky of my right as I lift up with the middle section and bow it. And it's important that this card is on top here, because this is going to keep these cards from flying away when you bow it up just like that. And I use the thumb to keep that on there, and then immediately you just let go and it'll riffle together just like that. And at speed, it's a very nice little cascade flourish at the card table. Here's the push-through shuffle, false shuffle, that retains the entire order. The way I do it is I actually undercut to the right. Top card is over here. Shuffle the top section into the right-hand section. Leave a little bit of a bed, shuffle in, let a chunk fall on top. I usually leave a little bit of a chunk on the right section because that should only help with the illusion of the cut in a moment. The cards are pushed together, and I use the ring fingers. Some people use the pinkies. It really doesn't matter what you use. I use the ring fingers. And when it comes to this section here, you're actually going to push this section around and through the original bottom section, and it's actually grabbed and taken over by the ring finger and thumb and immediately stripped out and forward, mimicking the action of an undercut, and slapped on top. And what you can actually do at speed when you do this is actually shuffle it, and again, that's why I use a little bit of a chunk there on top, because that undercut really looks like it's a cut coming out. And once that comes out, then I'll go into the kind of strip cut there. Gives it a nice illusion that the deck is being shuffled and cut, and I think it passes muster under most conditions, just like that. There's another full deck control, false shuffle. It's actually what's known as a strip out shuffle. And a strip out is generally done in this kind of fashion, where the right hand section, the top part, will be shuffled into the left hand section, and then it'll be kind of angled over so you can come back and grab it and strip it out again. And that looks fine, but a hustler's way of doing it actually looks like this, where you actually shuffle the cards in, and you come and you actually push as far as you can. You get this like out jogged look here until it actually makes contact with the left ring finger, and it can't go any further. And then you actually squeeze it in, and from the front you get this nice illusion of the cards being coming in, but you actually never even let go of it. You strip those cards right back out, and you can go into that false strip action. So at speed, it's actually a fairly decent looking false shuffle there. You can actually get it going, and it looks pretty damn good. All right, talk a little bit about the Zero Shuffle here. And normally Zero Shuffles, the big tell is what's known as the kind of stuff in the turkey thing, where the cards are being shoved in under the cards and it really looks unnatural. So this is a kind of a combination of a few different ideas from a few different people here. Earl Nelson, Captain Crunch, a couple other people here. But it's a very deep shuffle, first of all, so it doesn't look like that a zero is really even possible if you're familiar with the technique. But most importantly is the front cover here. You can see that the deck is actually being offset here a little bit, and it's this front cover here of these packs coming in that's going to cover the discrepancy of the height there. So if you shuffle the cards in deeply and come in, that front cover actually acts as shade, literally casting a shadow so you can't see what's going on underneath, and the two halves are going on top of each other. And it can be done with multiple cards, one card, what have you. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the actual mechanics of a Zero Shuffle, what happens is under the cover of whatever the number of cards you want, 1 card, 3 cards, etc., the cards are basically going to be, I'll show you right here, the cards are actually going to be shuffled together and they're going to be broken off. I'll leave off the top, say 2 cards here. What happens is these cards are going to be grabbed back here and broken apart, and then it's literally going to ride on top here. But it's this action of these, see that step there, causing a lot of shade there to not actually be able to see what's going on. So without the cover of the cards, it looks something like that. Not quite as good, but with the cover of the cards, you really can't see what's going on, and the fact that those two halves are not really coming together at all. It's a very deceptive shuffle, and I think it's a little bit more interesting way of doing the Zero Shuffle here than a few people I've seen do it. Here's a nice little in the hands false shuffle. It comes from Captain Crunch here. You can see it's not quite as deceptive from behind as it is in front, but what's happening from behind is you shuffle off, riffle off a chunk into the left hand. You're going to let a bed go down here and then riffle those into each other here. And as you bring the decks up to this upright posture, you see the right thumb digs in here. And what's going to happen is that actually you're going to twist the two decks here, and that's going to pivot off that right thumb, and that's what's going to break the two halves of the deck apart. Now this can't be seen from the front because that is being pushed out. That bed we left there is being pushed out by the left fingers. So as it's broken apart, then this thumb just guides that as these cards are apparently being squared together, and it looks fairly good from the front. It's actually quite deceptive. So at kind of half speed here, it's broken off. The cards are then brought back together just like that. It's kind of hard to do slowly, but at speed it looks something like that. All right, talk a little bit about the tabled Pharaoh here. This is actually the way Charlie Miller describes it, an expert card technique, and that's basically what I do here. I suggest you read it. It's much more thorough than I will go into here. But basically, it's the cards are cut over to the right, and they're offset a little bit, and then they're brought together in this motion here, and it's this bringing together motion, kind of conjoined with lifting up and letting them kind of riffle into each other, and it's basically the Pharaoh action happening right there. It's actually not nearly as hard as it may sound at first glance, because this moving of the two sections together starts it, and then as it comes to here, you lift up, and it almost happens by itself. Once you get the pressures right, you see it'll actually just kind of weave together. just like that. And I generally don't routine anything that requires a perfect 26 into 26, because I don't want to rely upon that in performance situations, because that's not generally 100%. And I've seen a lot of performers just doing regular Pharaohs in the hands. Pharaohs have trouble in performance situations. But generally what I'll use this for is for any kind of stacking or something that I need to get done quickly, that will fall into the mathematical conformities of a Pharaoh. It's great for weaving slugs together, and you don't have to worry about having all 26 being Pharaohed perfectly, as long as you know where that slug is. As long as you hit that slug and put that perfect little Pharaoh in there between those cards, then you're set for whatever kind of routine requires it. It's a great technique. I suggest you read Expert Card Technique and play with it. All right, here's actually a false shuffle that requires the table Pharaoh. It's kind of cool. Do your table Pharaoh here. What you do is when you come up, you want to make sure that there's these card or cards on top here, because you're going to press down and add pressure from the left hand on the top card as you do this little cascade. And what you do is you press back towards your hand here. Basically what you're doing is you're not allowing all of those cards to be flush together. It's going to end up in sort of an out-jog portion. So you're going to end up basically in a position to do a strip out shuffle. So when you come back down, your fingers from the front will mask that section, and then you can just strip right out and go into whatever false cut you want to. It's actually a locator card that I use whenever I'm performing, and I'll show you how I use this. It's a good way to keep track of a slug of cards, so on and so forth. First of all, whenever I have a new deck of cards, I'll go through it and shuffle them together for a little while, break them in, but then you'll start noticing that certain cards, if you cut, will show up over and over again, and that's just actually how the cards are cut and manufactured. So you might as well take advantage of that and use one of those cards as your key card. I'll generally try to use something like a spot card or something that won't draw much attention to itself. And what I'll do is I'll take and actually put a little indentation in the center of the deck, and then draw an X out with my nail from here in each direction, and that creates a very good crimp card. And you don't have to put the work in very strong, and it'll actually last very well, and you can't see it from anywhere around the deck, and you can cut directly to it. Now, one thing I've noticed, and I've actually found in performance, is that no matter how good you are at cutting it, you can usually reach over and cut it every time, especially if you have the work in strong. But to ensure that you do this, and you hit it every time, is what you want to do when you're performing, is that I actually found if you actually hold the deck and drop it, it'll almost always cut right at that crimp card. So what you do is you take advantage of that. You actually almost imperceptibly lift up the deck and then let it drop in one motion at your cut, and it'll automatically cut you where you want to do. Now, if you're actually going to use this as a slug, you can kind of keep track of, say, our 4 aces here. Put it on top. You can use any one of these cuts we talked about, like say the strip cut where it comes off the bottom, just like that. We'll position your crimp card right on top. You cut over, shuffle, bring your slug right up to the top, and you're in business. There's a quick little demo of what you can use the lovely table Pharaoh for. Have your cards you want to stack up on top. Have a cut card or key card at the bottom that you can cut to at will. Cut a small little packet down, setting it down there around the middle. Do your lovely little table Pharaoh here. Cut at your key card. Cut another small portion up to the top. Do another table Pharaoh. Cut at your key card. And now deal off every 4th card. There you go. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect Pharaohs, just have to hit your weave in the slug you want.
Show him something. 4 aces.
Here's a way of replicating the demo that Stuart Townsend did for Jamie Foxx in the film Shade. Have your 4 aces out, have your key card on the bottom, your breather, crimp, whatever. Take the 4 aces, put them into 4 separate sections of the deck. And they are going into 4 separate sections, but they're all going above center, as you can see here, because you're going to set up to do Martin Nash's table shift. And what that is basically a push-through shuffle
of those 4 cards here, just like that. You see they go around and end up side jogged here. You're going to pick up, start stripping out those top cards from the 4 aces, as these 4 aces will join and fall right onto the left-hand lower portion of the deck. You basically stripped out all the other cards except for the 4 aces. Now you get your key card on the bottom, so you want to let that fall first. Shuffle off, making sure that your slug of cards stays on top, and now you're in position to just use whatever kind of false strip cut you want to use to make sure you keep control of those cards. Let your key card fall on top, and now of course you got your aces back on top, and you can do with them as you please. Talk a little bit about the second deal here. It's pretty much the hand positions of Walter Scott's, Marlowe's, etc. Been talked about many different places before. Fingers along the outside edge, forefinger wrapped around the front. Deck is fanned a little bit in the hand. That'll come in handy if you ever play the scratch using edge marks, etc. Thumb in this position here. The thumb actually is kind of adhering to the top card, obviously, just by the skin. Kind of stick to that top card, and you'll see it able to move it all around and expose that second card at will, which is obviously going to make the deal work. The thumb itself also is kind of works as a spring here. You see, you pull it down, that top card will move right along with it, and the top card and the thumb will snap back into position. That'll kind of be helpful, get you kind of a feeling of the rhythm of the deal. The right hand comes to take the card. Obviously, the left thumb will expose the brief there a little bit, expose the second card. Just as that hand hits, left thumb draws the card out, and it's important that the card comes out in the same kind of plane as it would when you're normally dealing a card. You don't want the card to come out at some strange angle or something like that. You want the card to come out exactly as it would as you were dealing a top card. You can obviously play around with having the thumb lift when you deal. That works well. My thumb actually sticks pretty good to the cards, so that sometimes helps and sometimes hurts. But if you're worried about the brief of the card, what the amount of the second card you're showing, you really shouldn't worry about that too much. It'll come with time, and you can get it smaller and smaller, but it's not that important to have a tiny, tiny brief. I'm sure you've heard that before, to have a very good second deal. It's more about the timing of getting that. You can have a very large brief as that thumb strikes there just like that, and the rhythm and timing of the deal is what's more important. Of course, if you're going to do a demo here and you want to keep that top card turned up, you will want to practice getting that brief very small, but that's just for demo work here. And that's pretty much the lovely strike second deal. Enjoy. Couple of little things to talk about when it comes to the second deal, especially for any false deal actually, and that's actually how the cards are actually dealt around the table when you sail them out. Of course, with a second deal you can deal straight out the front of the deck just like that, and it looks fine, but it doesn't really feel, to me at least, like how I would deal cards straight. What I'm talking about is if I deal a card straight, the card usually comes out to the right a little bit for a split second and then is tossed forward. So I try to emulate that on my second deal a little bit. Even if it's done very, very quickly, the card comes out, it's held here for a second, and then kicked forward and sailed out. So even if it's done very quickly, you see the card is kind of coming out like this and then being tossed forward. It just seems to add to the illusion that the cards are actually being dealt out from the top of the deck as opposed to the second card down. Here's some work on the push-off kind of stud second deal. You can do both of these, a stud or a straight second deal. First of all, the push-off. Your card you want to keep on top of the deck. Hand position is pretty much the same as a strike, except the thumb is further over to this end here. This is not the Erdnase style. This is the alternate version. What you're actually going to do is if you actually push, you can see that two cards will kind of ride out as one just because of the way cards are, friction, etc. You can actually work on that, practice getting two cards pushing out. It doesn't matter if they're actually in alignment here, but it doesn't matter if they're a little out of alignment as well. especially with a B deck if you're working with that. You want to push the cards out, and as the hand comes to take it, and this would be for the stud style, the right thumb is actually going to make contact with the face of that second card. And the instant it does that, the left thumb is going to draw back that top card, leaving the second card exposed here. And that's when the right fingers will actually engage the second card as the left thumb draws it back, pulls it out, turns it over, deals it forward. Now, one of the major tells in this push-off stud second deal is this inner corner, flipping. What I mean is if you take the second card out and you turn it over a little bit, you'll get a little bit of a flip there, and that's a dead giveaway that the top card isn't being dealt off the deck, so you want to avoid that. So how can you do that? Well, a couple different things. First of all, after the cards are out, you want to take that second card out on the same exact plane as the top card as the rest of the deck. You don't want to move it one way or the other because that'll disturb the top card. Make sure it clears the deck cleanly before you turn it face up. That'll avoid giving any kind of little move on the inner corner there. Another technique you can use as well is actually come in once the fingers have made contact. Actually, the thumb has made contact with the second card and the left thumb pulls back the top card. You can use these fingers here to actually kind of guide and push down that top card and make sure it doesn't flip. So at speed, it actually looks like that. And that's actually a pretty good looking second deal as well. It gives a nice snap off the deck. So just be aware of that inner corner and make sure not to have it flipping up, telling the world you're dealing deuces. Here are a couple other variants of the second deal here. You can do a push off the same way and deal a straight second deal. Don't have to be a stud or something. I don't use this that often except for just demos and stuff, but a couple things to think about. First of all, action's exactly the same as a stud, but the thumb, you want to have the thumb kind of brushing across the back here. That really kind of helps sell that the top card is being taken off, just like that. So the thumb comes, brushes across as you take that second card out and deal it forward. A couple other variants. Let's see. Do the lapel take here as a variant of the stud. It's actually a very pretty deal. It can be done exceedingly slowly. Looks good for a demo. You can turn that top card face up, push off, basically take the card out in biddle position, turn it face up. Kind of a pretty looking deal. You can use the same technique. You don't have to do a perfect push off. You can actually use the Vernon New Theory, which is push off a little bit. Your thumb actually catches the second card as well, so the second card comes riding along, and as you come in, pull that card back, pull the second card out, turn it face up. Especially with the B back, that actually looks pretty good. Just some second deal variants for you. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the infamous bottom deal. We'll start with the strike bottom, first of all, and I generally use this with less than the full deck. Myself, if I use a full deck, I'm going to generally use the squeeze out bottom, but there's no reason why you can't use the strike for full deck as well. I've done it, and I've seen other guys do it very well. The grip, first of all. You see that it's held very high in the hand. You can see that there's actually no portion of the bottom card is actually in contact with the palm. It's held high up, and the reason for that is friction. You want to have as little amount of contact and a little amount of friction as possible between your hands, fingers, and that bottom card. Help get it out. Now the card is kind of cradled in sort of a modified Erdnase grip, for lack of a better term here. And these fingers are held very lightly along there, as are the fingers on the outside of the deck. They're basically, since it's held up so high in the hand, it's almost just the fingertips there. That'll help actually the card coming out so it doesn't have to overcome much of the fingers as well. Get the finger flash down to a minimum. Cards are fanned a little bit, doesn't really matter about that. And what happens is that as you deal on the square, as you deal around each time, top card's pushed off, each time that middle finger is going to come into that space here between your middle finger and ring finger of the left hand and make contact with that bottom card. And when you want to take that bottom card out, you're actually just going to make contact with that and actually draw that bottom card out. And it's actually a little bit of opposite pressure between the left thumb pushing down and the right middle finger pushing up to extrude that card out. And if you give it a little bit of a twist here, kind of coming out a little bit, it'll actually cut out around those fingers to some extent, and again cut down on the finger flash here, and then it's dealt out forward as the left thumb draws that finger, the top card back. Now you also want to get ideal the cards a little bit of a brushing motion with the hand held at a little bit of an angle. That'll actually help the illusion as well as when that bottom card comes out. And as soon as that card comes out and you pull that top card back, that left thumb is going to come off to give the illusion again of the top card being dealt. And it's going to be very good for sailing cards out like that, or you can actually do it very deceptively in dealing the card face down in front of you or into a pile for an effect, magic trick, etc. All right, talking about the strike bottom deal, I thought I'd show a little bit of Larry's turn and take bottom. Very good thing by Larry Jennings. Very nice creation. Very useful in the world of Magic. Have your object card up on top of the deck. Bring it to the top with your favorite's chosen method. Hand the deck to a spectator. Have them start dealing cards into your hand one at a time. And at any time they feel like it, they can stop and set the deck down. Of course, when they do, you ask them, do you want to go further? Is this the card you want to stop on? They say, that's it, we'll stop right there. You say, absolutely, very nice, and you just happen to stop on your card right there. And that's how Larry originally did the effect. It can actually be done a little bit differently too. If you have the card on the bottom, instead of actually coming and taking and turning the hand over, you can actually just move the rest of the cards aside and then reveal the card. The hand motions are what really sell this, and Larry's turn and take originally is done. Basically, it's the left hand that does most of the work this time. The right hand just makes contact with the bottom card there, the middle finger. The rest happens just as the left hand turns. The right hand just stays completely stationary there, gripping that bottom card. The left hand then takes it and turns it over to reveal it. And at time, at speed, it actually looks just like that, and it's a very deceptive bottom deal. Same thing is true on the other one, where you can actually just take the right-hand cards out of the way, leave the bottom one right here in the hand, and turn it over to reveal it. Great bottom. All right, now let's talk about my personal favorite deal, the bottom deal, and this is the way I generally do it. It's the what I term the squeeze-out bottom, and you'll see why I call it that in a minute here, because that's literally what's going on, is that your hand is actually squeezing out the card. It's not a strike, it's not a push-out. First of all, deck position. It's easier to show with half a deck here so you can see what's going on. The deck is held between the first finger and the heel of the thumb. Again, pretty high up in the deck. You don't want to have much friction on there either. And you can see just by adding a little bit of pressure here, that's actually all that's holding on to the deck is that finger and the thumb. And by actually pressing on this, you'll see the bottom card. If you press a little bit with the front finger, those bottom cards will start to bend and bow out a little bit. And that's actually what's called, what I'm calling the squeeze out, because that's literally what you do to the deck. You squeeze it here just like that, and then at the front fingers here, the second and third finger, right about at the first crease here, you don't want to bring the fingers underneath. You want to actually make contact with that bottom card, and then just relax the hand, and you'll see that that bottom card rides along, comes along for the ride. And it's right there, ready to be dealt. And actually I generally move that second finger kind of out of the way to get that corner out of the way all in one nice little motion. And you see the card is there ready to be dealt. And then you just are in position to come and deal it out when you're ready. Same position for a full deck, just put the rest of the deck on top. Same exact thing happens. You just have actually a little more cover now. There's a little bit of a fan there on the side. It's kind of spread over a little bit. Cards are squeezed, and you do this at some point 2 or 3 cards ahead of time when you're going to deal. You squeeze the card out, and you see even from that angle over there, which is technically the worst angle, you can barely see. You can see it from behind here, but if you're to my right, you really can't see that there's a card out there, and literally it's actually right up at the same level as the top card. So when you come in to deal the card, you deal it every time, and this right hand comes in and is kind of masking that from the right side as well. Your left hand is kind of on the base of the table here, the back of it, and it's kind of angled down a little bit. So all of these top cards are coming off at a little bit of an angle, and that kind of helps you with the sound as well. So when it comes time to take the bottom card, it's right there, ready for you to be taken out. Same position as in the strike bottom here. This is the right middle finger is actually coming under here and is actually going to make contact with that card and pull it right out. And since it's already started around those fingers, you're going to have very minimal flash here, and it's pretty much covered by this kind of modified Erdnase grip as it comes out. Bring that thumb up, give it the illusion that it's coming across here. And you should probably talk about the angle it comes out at. It should always come out at the same angle as the deck as well. You don't want it coming out at some strange angle. And a nice way of checking this is actually doing kind of a double deal, pulling the top and bottom cards at the same time, and you see if they're in alignment, you know you got yourself a pretty good bottom there, because it's going to look the same. Now likewise, when it's coming out, you want it to come out and give this moment where it's actually up above the deck, so you can actually see and have that audience, whoever's looking at it, that card is above the top of the deck. That's part of the illusion. This whole thing is one big illusion, so you might as well do everything you can to make it a good looking one. Alright, a couple more things here about the lovely bottom deal here. First of all, seeing at this angle, you can see this is what theoretically is the worst angle on a bottom deal. And in the squeeze out, you can see that the card is actually out there pretty far, but if you're holding the deck with the back of your hand brushing the tabletop here and kind of angled a little bit, that pretty much covers the entire angle there. You really can't see that the card is there, and when the card is taken, the right hand comes in and is always making a cover action there as that card comes out and is dealt forward. So you just get in the habit of dealing cards in this manner, and then when you come and deal the bottom, it's right there. And a couple other things is to add to the illusion of the top card coming out. First of all, again, like in the second deal, I always come out and make sure that the card is coming out at the same plane and on the same angle as the top card it would normally be dealt. You get that bottom card comes out, and you want to come out and have it end up above the top of the deck. This is an important thing, because a big giveaway on most bottoms is a lot of times the card will come out and it'll be lower than the rest of the deck, and that just doesn't feel right or look right. So when the bottom card comes out, you want to actually have that bottom card come out and then have that brief moment where you give them this view of that bottom card, which is actually supposed to look like the top card, above the actual deck in the hand, and then toss it out. And those are just a couple little techniques that you can use to help improve the lovely bottom deal. Alright, talk a little bit about the stud bottom deal here, which is the act of turning the card face up as you take it and then tossing it out there. And there are a couple different theories on how to kind of actually do that, so I'll show you. First of all, the way I do it generally is actually the same way, with that kind of squeeze out. Squeeze the card, move it out into position. A couple of cards during the deal ahead of when you're actually going to deal the bottom. Now the take of the top card is generally done in this fashion, where you come, card is pushed over a little bit by the left thumb, the fingers grab and kind of revolve this card around, and you're coming around, and with that thumb each time coming around underneath the deck, and if you've got the card squeezed out there, that's going to make contact with it, and then you take it, turn it around, revolve it around, and kick it forward. Now the bottom done exactly the same way. The thumb comes in, grabs, makes contact here, you're going to actually just kind of basically revolve that around and out and up. But you're going to mimic the same actions here on the right hand here as you take that card. You come in, the left thumb is going to pull back that card as you take and revolve around that bottom and bring it around forward. Give that moment where the bottom card is actually looking above the top, so you have that moment. Now there's a couple different ways to make the sound similar, because the sound on the bottom deal, especially on the stud, is a little bit different than the top, so you've got to kind of bring the two together so they sound right. Same thing, squeeze, get that out there. Now one theory is to take and make the top sound like the bottom, and the way you do that is actually by kind of scraping that top card along the outside edge of the deck here every time, using the fingers to really kind of rip it off. So then when you come and take that bottom, you rip it around like that, and it sounds somewhat similar. Another way of doing it is to do kind of a softer take. So again, the card's squeezed out there, it comes and you kind of bring the hand back to yourself and then move it back and forth in this sort of arc here. So the hand has come out and it's kind of a softer take. This is sort of like Marlowe's Havana deal. So when you come to take the bottom, same thing, it's squeezed out there, it's in position. You just come and move the left hand away and then kind of revolve it around. And you're almost kind of throwing that bottom card into the right hand. So again, you take it, squeeze it out. So as you come, you boom, boom, and then you kind of come around like that, turn it around and kick it forward. That's a couple different ways of doing that. And the major bad kind of tell on this, with the exception of the sound, is this kind of right side here, because it's really hard to cover this. So you really want to mask it with the hand. So again, the card's out there, mask it with the hand, and kind of give this view to everyone who's around, which is a natural way of doing it, because they're actually dealing around. That's a natural way of dealing the cards out there. So you want to give them this view here, so when you take that card, that bottom card, they don't have a lot to see, and hopefully that you can get away with it. So it's not something that has a lot of use in Magic and stuff, but it's a technique that you should probably have in your arsenal and play around with. Another way of doing a stud is dealing it to the player first instead of turning it to you. And this actually looks better as a bottom deal. That was a bottom there. Same motion again, squeeze out, get it into position. You're doing it just like this, and you deal it out like that. Same exact things happening as you're doing. It's almost exactly as a straightforward face down bottom deal, except as soon as you pull it out, you turn it right to the player's face and then put it down there. This is a more kind of a magical way of doing it if you're dealing into a pile or maybe for a for a flop. An interesting way of doing it on the flop is if you don't have a burn card and you're allowing it to get by, if you want to have the Queen of Spades there as the flop card, you can come and deal off, because a lot of times people will deal 1, 2, 3, and you just take the third one as a bottom and then turn it face down and go right into the flop position there. That's a common way of doing it in home games. So at speed, it's 1, 2, 3. Actually, I went 4 there. Let me try that again.
Go ahead.
At speed, it'll actually look like this. So you're 1, 2, and you just take the third one off. It's very straightforward. And wow, that was a good flop there, wasn't that? That was totally not set up, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're actually going to deal the flop on the thing, you'd also deal a burn card. And if you just deal it straight down, just deal it on the third one or on the second one, and it'll go right by there, just like that. So at speed, it's boom, and then just go 1, 2, 3, and you put your bottom card into the flop whenever you need it.
Look, I'm not gonna do anything, okay?
Get him up now!
Okay.
The appropriate term here is...
Here's a great palm that isn't necessarily gambling related, but I use it all the time, and it's created by the professor, Di Vernon. It's known as topping the pack. And it's one of those moves like the diagonal palm shift that just feels good to do. And it's quite simple. What it is basically as you lift the deck to the fingertips or to set it down or give it a cut, you go out with a card. Here's what's actually happening, the mechanics of it. As the right hand comes over to apparently lift the deck to the left fingertips, the middle finger of the right hand is going to be the pivot point as that left thumb actually will push. You can see that it actually pivots off at an angle like that, and that puts it into perfect position to be palmed as the deck is lifted to the fingertips. The left fingers push that card right into palm, using the pinky there as kind of a guide, pushes it right into palm. And I actually like to turn the deck on end a little bit like that, keeping that thumb glued there as the palm happens, or you can take and give the deck a bit of a cut as you set it down there, then you retire out with the card, and that's what's known as topping the pack. Alright, here's another little variation on topping the pack for multiple cards, because you can't do this pushing pivoting action for multiple cards. So what I've come up with is as a way of, if you get a break under whatever cards you want, you can either pinky count, spread, however you want. So if you want to go out with 4, you do basically the same exact actions. You go out with the cards as you have them cut or set down. You go out with the 4 cards like that. And the action on that is almost identical, except that you've got a break here to work with. You've got, say, your 4 cards, you got a little pinky break with that. And what happens is, as the hand comes over, basically the thumb is going to make contact with these cards since they're broken off a little bit, and that is going to be what pivots them into that same exact position. Same thing happens with the left fingers, moving them into position. Same exact mechanics all the way around. It's just that right thumb is what's grabbing hold of them and putting them into the little jutted out position. Here's an interesting little chop you can use if you want to take some cards out. It's basically done in the process of an in-the-hand shuffle here. And you see you actually steal some cards out as you set the deck down to be cut, just like that. You've gone out with as many cards as you would like. And obviously, if you know what the top cards are, or you have it cut down here like that, if those are the top cards, you can riffle down to it, or you can riffle off the left side. Basically what happens is you riffle until you hit whatever number you want, let those fall on top here just like that. The thumb's going to dig in here as you go to move the cascade forward, and you see they basically just go right into perfect position to go into a gambler's palm. As you set it down, you just break the hand down, put the rest of the deck aside, and you can go out in whatever position. You can steal a whole bunch out, or you can steal 1 out. It's a nice action palm that seems very almost impossible to do, and yet there it is, and you're out, and you're ready to do whatever you want to do. Alright, this is another way of going out with some cards. It's what's known as the cop. And it's very simple. You have a break under whatever cards you want on the bottom of the deck, and basically in a kind of forward and backwards motion, you go out with the cards, and you can see you can actually use the table there as a bit of shade there to kind of keep that hand resting on the table, and those cards are kind of hanging out loosely there. The composition is generally in this kind of position, but if you're at the table, you can actually do it quite a bit deeper so it hangs off there, and you've taken out whatever cards you want there. You have them on the bottom of the deck. Get a break however you want to, forwards, backwards here, just like that. You have the break right here. Take them out, spread the deck out, have it cut, whatever. This is also a great way of actually replacing the cards. If you have the cards out, cards are cut, shuffled, whatever, you bring them back and you just bring them right back in to the bottom of the deck. Works very well. All right, here's a very simple hop here that actually will work in a lot of games, actually. You got your stock here or whatever on top. Have the deck cut over. This is what we're calling the delay cut, and you'll see why here. Because basically you just pick up, this is the bottom half, put it right here, and then you need some kind of bit of business to kind of throw everybody's rhythm off, and usually redoing the ante or making some kind of bet adjustment. Put the top half right back on top, and hopefully nobody noticed. There you go. Very simple. All right, this is the little demo one there that we just did, and it's basically using the pass cut, and it's very simple, it's very straightforward if you know how to do a shift, and all you're basically doing is you're doing a shift in the motion of actually cutting the cards. So what looks like should be the top is actually back over here, and you don't have to do anything. Now, if you know about the shift in the pass, I'm not going to go into depth here about it, but it's a transposition of the two halves, and the pass cutting is actually just recutting it, so it makes it look very deceptive when done. A couple tips straightforward about the shift. I'm not going to talk in depth about it. Just doing it obviously very slow. There's the pass cut. First of all, the straightforward shift. A couple little tips on it. It should be held high in the hand like this. You don't want it deep in the hand. You want it actually kind of over this thumb heel here. And when you're going to cut in where the break is, you want your finger all the way through. You don't want it to be deep in there and kind of buried, because that means you're going to have more space for the two halves to clear each other. So you want it up high, you want it cut through, that finger all the way through, and the hand comes and grabs at the far outside left edges of basically the bottom here, because the two major things you want to overcome in doing a shift are get around this corner with the thumb, and you want to get this space out of the way. Vernon talked a lot about this little triangle here, because if you can get to this position here where the deck is actually angled a little bit, it'll happen very, very quickly. So what you want to do is in the pass cut, let me get it to this position here, there's our stock back up on top, is that you're actually going to pick up the aces, and you just get a break on the offbeat here, anywhere, it doesn't matter. Pick up the aces, put them on top, and immediately do the shift. But instead of bringing the two halves together, you go right to the table with that, and there's actually the bottom half, and what looks like you use the cut here, and you do it off center here. This is actually the top here, but they think that's the top, and then you bring it together here, bring it up, and you can do whatever kind of false move or whatever and show that it's actually been righted here. So I'll try to do it at speed here over the shoulder here. You actually cut it down there just like that, pick it up, and boom, it's right there. Now again, I'm not going to go in depth in the shift here, because I could do a whole couple DVD set just on the shifts, but that should give you a couple ideas. All right, this is the explanation for a little table hop that we just saw there. Louis Zingona usually gets credit for this, but I'm sure it was many other people invented it instead of him. Obviously, the top is here, your stock is there. It actually controls a full deck. Deck is cut over towards you, and literally you're going to hop the bottom half over the top as you sweep them together. This is something you do obviously for a demo, but I don't know if I'd do it in a game. But what happens is you pick up this bottom half, and you're going to grab it in the crotch of the thumb and first finger there, and as you come by to sweep up, you're literally going to take that over the bottom portion of the deck, which is actually the top, let it coalesce by having this top card make contact in sort of an angle on the felt here, because that's actually going to cause this to ride up without having the decks kind of interweave or start to kind of quasi-faro here. And as you go over, these 4 fingers are going to grab that half, and as you can see here, I'll actually move it at an angle here, you can see these are actually going to be the motive force to pull that along as the entire hand is moving the deck off the table and bring it right up into the other hand here. And I'll try to do this at a little bit kind of third speed or something here. It's hopped over, picked up, you grab it and sweep it right into the hand, and obviously now you're ready to deal and you've got your stock back up on top. And this works really well if you're able to actually take it off the table and sweep it into the hand in one nice little move. You can bring it off the table into your hand, and it's a nice demo move. I don't know if I would do it in a game, but I'm sure somebody has. Here's the mechanics of what's actually going on. As you see, as the deck is picked up, it's actually stepped over to the left quite a bit. As it's placed into the left hand, the left index finger curls underneath, and it's going to be pushing up with a lot of pressure as these left fingers grab. And what's actually going to happen is, that's going to exactly happen just like that. It's going to flip those cards out. That's why you need that right arm reaching around in front, because not only does it mask the action, it's actually the wall that is going to bounce up against as you come over to grab the checks and toss them in. That is what actually makes the shift not only invisible, but actually happen itself. All right, this is another interesting little shift to add to your collection. I saw an old hustler used to demonstrate this, and it looked pretty good in his hands. It's basically the idea of the bigger motion covering the smaller motion here. As the deck is cut, it's picked up very, stepped off very widely here. And as it's picked up, you can see what happens is actually this lower portion is actually revolved right up and around as it's set down into the hand. And it's actually done in the large sweep, as you can see. But the action is being done right here in the hands, as that one top part is just being removed right down below, and as it comes, it coalesces back into the hand and completes the cut. Well, since it was in the credits of Shade, we should at least talk about it a little bit here. This is the Charlie Miller table shift. I don't know if I would ever try to use it in a game, but it's interesting nonetheless. The deck is of course cut, and when you pick it up, you step it over quite a bit like this, and as you bring the 2 halves of the deck towards your left hand, it's going to hit up against that first finger, is going to make contact with that stepped portion here, and it's going to rotate on the middle finger of the right hand here and rotate right around. The left hand kind of comes around to mask it a little bit as the right hand finishes up rearranging those 2 halves back around. Now I think to make it actually somewhat deceptive, especially from across the table, I generally bring this portion up and then finish it in an upright posture, so at least I think that gives at least somewhat of a deceptive manner to it. Anyway, it's one of these fun things, and kind of included just for historical purposes. All right, here's a useful little technique. It's Steve's version of a kind of on-the-fly riffle call of a 4 of a kind. They yell out, say like 4 9s or something. You can get a lay of the land, look at it, and hopefully be able to nail these guys as you're going around. See if you can get one more shuffle here. A little sloppy, but yeah, I think they got the 4 9s there. Now what's happening here is you're actually doing a vertical. Oh. Well, hey man, I didn't realize you were back in town.
But you told Steve you weren't going to tip that.
Yeah, I mean I did, you know, but I was just kind of thinking for this.
Hey, we're going to have a problem here. You really want to do that?
Yeah, I think I do.